My name is Ginny, also known as Thirds Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing. Reading strategy articles. I mean, I've always really loved the game, but I am into Magic more than I've ever been into Magic. And it's a good time, for sure. Let Incorporated. Hiya, Jin. Good afternoon. How are you folks doing? I'm having a beautiful artistic day. I don't know. I've just got energy today on stream. We already improvised some poetry. I wrote some poems today. Like, it's a good time. I talked to a what do y'all call yourselves? Historical something, philosophy, historical materialists or something, but that's not the right one. I don't think it's materialist. I have a new friend who has very similar philosophical ideas as you, Lana Incorporated. And then budgetable cards from high school, an older collection. I incorporated. Sick. Type for work while I semi-lurk as always. Yeah, for sure. Get some work done. That's good for you. I like when y'all get work done in my chat, so I don't feel like you're just sitting on Twitch. But I guess I provide content of some educational merit here, right? You finished your RP character. Very interesting. That's exciting. I would love to hear about your character. I think we should probably try to get into a poem, though, now that we're, like, in the swing of streams starting. So, let me look at what we have, because I think it might be a poem from Imrepenguinoman, which is super cool. Yeah, you can send the link in the Discord and other people can look at it. I won't on stream. I'm not going to let you derail me this time, Lana Incorporated, because we know how that went. Penguinoman, hey! Yes. You're making breakfast, Nico? What's for breakfast? What am I doing? Twitch responses. Let's see what we got. So we have so many. 89 submissions over the history of the channel. Very exciting. Open in front of Krita can be on YouTube. No, you need to be there, but you are here. How do I make it more emotive and drawing? Okay. This is one you submitted a while ago, Penguinoman. It's from, I don't know if I have a, oh, I do have a date. It's from 6 days ago. You submitted this to me last week. So it is called, let's see, Crown of Thorns. Oh, this is, did you, interesting. I feel like I saw this maybe in an early version, perhaps. My God, why have you forsaken me? Nothing like a reference to the Bible, you know, I like that. As a non-Christian trans girl of some religious knowledge. Wait, is High Caliber here? I don't, if High Caliber was here, we started and then did not finish Hungry, but that's mostly because I got a headache 2 days ago on stream and just had to stop altogether. But we'll do that one later, maybe, if High Caliber comes in. For now, we are doing Crown of Thorns by Penguinoman. And let me go ahead and put that in chat, because that's what I'm supposed to do as a responsible streamer. Do you feel there are any trigger warnings for this poem, Penguinoman? We are currently reading Crown of Thorns by Mr. Penguinoman. It didn't look like there was any, right? But let's see. Cold flesh, blah blah blah, mourning art, deserving of death, flawed thorns. That looks fine. Okay. we are currently reading that. And we are going to pin that, manually unpin when we finish this one, if we remember, because we never remember. I guess responsible streaming, yeah. Not really, maybe religious trauma. Yeah, that's normal. Can't find the cards. I'm gonna rip up my room to find them. You're not gonna rip up, yeah, fair. I'll show them off when you find them, for sure, for sure. Did I submit mine? Do I have one submitted? Do you have one submitted? This Imrepenguinoman one is pretty old, but maybe there's a Drowning Devil even further back. That would have to be before the Dew on the Grass ones. Do you have something? No, the last thing I read of yours was a body like a house coat. And if you have submitted something more recent, Imrepenguinoman is going to be in before that, because Imrepenguinoman was 6 days ago. And if it sounds like something's missing, but I do have from you something more recently. I have the game show. What would you do for $1,000? And I think that's the one I have from you, which we can maybe get to depending on whether like Callie shows up and that kind of thing. It was submitted. Perfect, 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 perfect. Art. Camera. This ring light always falls over, and it makes my life quite difficult. I never am able to like actually have this look good when I turn it on. So I think we'll just jump right into reading those a couple times and then push the break back a little bit and get into it. Crown of Thorns. Let's make this bigger. Why is it still selected? Go away. Okay. By Imrepenguinoman. A lot of biblical references, yes. Lurk, Lana. Thank you. I appreciate the lurk. I appreciate having you around. Definitely helps the stream for sure. So, and you were asking about, here's the form. This one. Open to chat providing critique. Chat, you are allowed to give your comments on this poem. It will be on YouTube, and the question is, how do I make it more emotive and drawing? Whatever that means. What's emotion anyway, right? Having me here but not commenting and derailing Lamau, well, you know, you get sent the ads by Twitch, and that makes me like 1 cent every stream from you being here, so it's basically a win. Biblical references of the Catholic canon here. Cool. Here we go. Crown of Thorns by Imrepenguinoman. I'm gonna put this pen down because it's not how we do it. My God, why have you forsaken me? I've carved your verses into my flesh. Yet dark is my night and cold is the ground. Are you the one who salts my tears until they dry and leave my eyes barren? My God, why have you forsaken us? Are we but draughts you tear and cast aside? Does the writer mourn his torn art, or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? My God, why have you forsaken me? Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? Would no man falter in my position? Do you seek to witness credence in tribulation, or is this agony the secret chord you long to hear? My God, why have you forsaken us? Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? So why claim mine tainted and deserving of death when I finally found heaven laying beside me? in the end. My God, why have you forsaken me? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns, conditional in nature. I can't meet. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone. He is not lust. He is love. Crown of Thorns. I'm Imrepenguinoman. Very nice. Many references, as you said, for sure. We're gonna read it again. Crown of Thorns by I'm Imrepenguinoman. My God, why have you forsaken me? I've carved your verses into my flesh, yet dark is my night and cold is the ground. Are you the one who salts my tears until they dry and leave my eyes barren? My God, why have you forsaken us? Are we but drafts you tear and cast aside? Does the writer mourn his torn art, or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? My God, why have you forsaken me? Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? Would no man falter in my position? Do you seek to witness credence in tribulation, or is this agony the secret chord you long to hear? My God, why have you forsaken us? Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? So I claim mine tainted and deserving of death when I finally found heaven laying beside me in the end. My God, why have you forsaken me? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns, conditional in nature. Conditional in nature, I can't meet. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone. He is not lust. He is love. Crown of Thorns. This feels like it's gay. Feels gay to me. Crown of Thorns. It's so gay. Okay. Love it. It sounds gay, yeah. In a very good way. Yeah. Like, what? I found heaven laying beside me in the end. He is not lust. He is love. Right? Took me till the second time to make that connection. I'm going to go through, and I just want to do a little underline. First of all the biblical references, and I might miss some. But, my God, why have you forsaken me? Of course, not of course, if you're not familiar, is words of the big J himself. This is Jesus. He says this when he dies on the cross, which is like pretty important in the grand scheme of things in the Bible, right? Brightness down. So that's like number one, right? Right off the bat. I wrote in yellow. I can see it. I don't know how well stream can see it. He dies. Spoilers? Yeah, I spoiled the Bible. I'm sorry. It's like spoiling the myth of Sisyphus. I've carved your verses into my flesh. Yet dark is my night and cold's the ground. The night, the shadow of the mountain, the valley of death, night, whatever guidance. It's like, I would say tangentially biblical. We talk about night a lot in terms of sin and suffering and things in the Bible, right? Are you the one who salts my tears? Salt is mentioned until you leave my eyes barren. This is a word used very often in the Bible, talking about women usually, or men. But I think that interpretation, not bearing, works really well here, and I'll talk about that. Like I really like this barren here. My God, why have you forsaken us? So now we take a little spin on the classic variations on a theme. And we do alternate these, which is cool, in 5 sections. Are we but drafts you tear and cast aside? Does the writer mourn his torn art? You still till your garden. So, Garden of Eden is that one. Oh, wrong one. Till your garden, hoping for us to return. My God, why have you forsaken me? Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? I mean, this is just talking to God, relating to, like, salvation and stuff. Do you seek to witness credence and tribulation? Specific word used in the Bible, trials, tribulations, right? You missed a question mark? Missing a question mark. Where would you like a question mark? I don't see any missing question marks. Oh, down here? We weren't there yet. You were looking ahead. Boom. Second forsaken us, yeah. And then secret chord, this is, I don't think this is actually a reference to the Bible. This is a reference to Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, right? David's secret chord. That's one of my favorite songs ever, to be very clear. Love it. But maybe the secret chord is mentioned in the Bible itself. I don't know. It would make sense if it was, but I just don't know where, if it is. Otherwise, I don't remember how it goes. Hold on, you'll Google. Sure. So again, this is love, not the seed you sow. Parable of the sower. This is in the New Testament. We can maybe talk about that one. It's in the Bible. That makes sense. Where is it in the Bible? We might pull out the Bible today on stream again to talk about these, to do some research of context. And then your burden comes with thorns. That's the crown of thorns, of course, which is what Big J wore on the cross. And I believe flesh of flesh is also in the Bible somewhere. Conditional, sort of a reference to the language of unconditionality. Appears only once. Oh, in a psalm. That makes sense. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed reach you. Wait. So, yeah, Psalm 51 is the psalm I use as reference to Miserere, my poem. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. I lifted directly from my poem. And then blot out, right? I say exalt my purity, blot out the darkness below me. This is a psalm that I didn't realize was in there, but also is the secret chord even mentioned in that excerpt? Am I blind? Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins. Blot out my iniquity. Create a pure heart. It's not even mentioned in there. At least in that excerpt of the psalm, which is funny. But yeah, my poem. So this was reminding me of Miserere, my poem, right? Especially the Why Have You Forsaken Me, which goes like, wind vacant of warmth hardens all wounds, emptied of blood, now frozen on crimson earth. Oh, it's been a while since we've done Miserere. Due to blood, now on crimson earth. What's the next part? Oh well. The next part is the bones part, but there's something in the start of the line. Not sure. But then it uses bones crushed rejoice. Like, all of that is in the first stanza. It's been a while. I always forget the third line. Am I trying to remember still? I should just find it so this isn't, like, plaguing my mind. Where's my poem? Oh well. Tragic. Miserere. It just doesn't exist. Might be in this document. Okay. Judge so kindly by your eternal mercy, let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Burn their eyes. Cleanse my soul, burn their eyes with swords of flaming radiance. Blot out the dark below me, exalt my purity. Domine, Deus noster. Right. So I use that psalm for reference in my work, which makes these sort of very similar. So, there's also a few other things going on, right, in this poem, because we're not just talking about the Bible, and we can use like red or something. So we talk about the flesh, we talk about sort of the person, and who they are in relation to God. The worldly things. Would no man falter in my position? Why is my heart tainted? When I have found heaven, when I have found joy lying beside me, a person, for talking gay, in the end, he is not lust, he is love. Now, of course, the Christian would just say, no, it is lust, right? Because you're gay, and that's like bad or something, but this is the fundamental tension of the poem. And then we just have the why have you forsaken me's, and otherwise it's pretty dense. I feel like everything pretty much relates. We have the idea of the drafts and the art, which maybe is just a mixed metaphor for, just feels like a mixed metaphor for God turning his back on the subject, right? Carved your verses into my flesh. Are you the one who salts my tears? This gives the picture, I would say, from the human perspective of a very antagonistic God. So it's sort of the antagonistic, right? It's this tension between a God who is said to do things that are like good, like sow seeds in hearts and give cherished gifts and whatever. And then, of course, the maybe hypocrisy there in the non-acceptance. And this is a very difficult thing. This is, of course, like, Christian doctrine is wild. And I don't know. Of course, we also relate sort of ourself, or the subject relates themselves to Jesus fundamentally throughout this poem by wearing the crown of thorns and asking the same question, right? Which gives some feeling, perhaps, right? If we say I am like Jesus, then we can look at maybe the qualities, or I relate to this, I speak in the same way, thus I relate, thus I'm like this person, thus I in some way share qualities, which we will probably want to do some symbolic looks at this after I take a quick break, right? So I'm going to run a little ad for those on Twitch, and I'm going to take a break. I will be right back. Med check, drink water, self-care, feed yourself, stretch, don't look at your computer or devices. Ankles on screen. Okay. Water has been drunk, stretching has been done, voice has been reminded to train. And I ate a bite of my apple, even. This is all good. Chapstick. That's the other thing on breaks. Welcome back. I'm still Ginny. Ah! I dropped the lid of my chapstick. The apple? Yes. I indulge in sin, eating apples and such. I'm a snake. I'm not to be trusted. Let's talk about the Bible. So, there are so many symbols here. And this is why symbolic analysis and context is important. Because if we didn't know about this Bible, if we didn't know about the Bible, this poem might be very confusing. Wouldn't that make me Eve, mother of all of you? I feel so weird. Should I refrain from explaining? Should I refrain from explaining EM for stream or them? Oh, well, we're gonna work together on general symbolic analysis. So, you'll see. I don't know if you've been here when we've done symbolic analysis, but basically the way I like to do this is break down every symbol that we see in the poem. This can be from literature, this can be from culture, and then we can go through alongside chat and say, what does this represent in various aspects of culture, in various, religion, literature, colloquial, and old life, right? And you providing, ideas is not off limits, and explanation of the poem as a whole is now something that I sort of allow at the end of stream, sort of for the purpose of, well, this is what I was intending. How can I express this more, right? But until you're prompted, don't explain, right? So, I suppose we'll start with the title. We have the crown of thorns as a symbol, right? This is something that appears in the Bible, and it doesn't have, it's sort of there. It has a lot of meaning throughout time, but it's not like the biggest symbol of Christianity. It, of course, is something that's very important. We could talk about salt as another symbol. This has a lot of meaning in a lot of ways. Mentioning something like salt can have meaning indeed. The garden. We can put this here. What else? What other symbols are here? We can talk about seeds and sowing. Ayo. The thorns, the flesh. We can talk about flesh. This is an important symbol in the Bible, actually. And any other symbols in this anyone feels we should talk about? Crown of thorns, salt, garden, seed, the flesh. There are a few other things here that maybe would be worth looking at. So if anything feels like, or Penguinoman, if there's a symbol that you're like, well, this is one that I think you should look at to break down the poem, absolutely. You're welcome. Barren. Okay. Yeah, salt is there, but definitely barren. We can do that one. Yeah. Barren is important, I find, because it has a couple nice meanings for this poem. I'm so glad I suggested that a while back. I love hearing what people wanted to do with the poem. Yes. Thank you, During Level. I appreciate. Cherish, gift, or burden. Okay. Yeah, we can talk about the gift. Slash burden. Well, we can, like, I don't think the idea of the burden, a burden is maybe not a symbol in itself so much as like the idea of a gift, right? And we'll look at these in multiple lenses, not just through the Bible, but also culture, right? Because this is how we find broader meaning through things, right? This is why symbols happen. So we're going to break down each of these and just talk about like what they represent. Simple enough. This is a way you can analyze poems like really easily and jump into it. You look at things, you say, oh, this is something that has broader societal context. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to write down everything associated with it, and I'm going to do it for every time that happens. And if you look for overlap, you look for relation between them, you can start to organize a broader theme in the poem. So, Crown of Thorns. Anyone have something they feel that this represents? Especially if you're familiar with Christianity, but don't have to be. It's used in pop culture every so often. Kendrick Lamar has a crown of thorns on I guess no longer his most recent album, right? False King. Okay. False King. Mustard! Oh, the album is so good. Purity and Sacrifice. Yep. Sacrifice. Purity. Purity. Does the crown of thorns itself represent the purity? Probably. Suffering? Yes. It's all very intertwined. Like, of course it represents, like, Jesus. This is what the symbol points to, fundamentally. I just listened to it today, actually. Bro had me screaming the name of a condiment. It's such a good album. I'm such a fan of Kendrick. Kendrick, Tyler, I want to sound like them on a microphone, you know? This feels good, like a good start for understanding these symbols, right? Salt. What does salt mean? What does salt represent in society, in literature, in everything? You want to sound like Mitski? You should sound like Mitski. If you sound like Mitski, you'll do very well in life. Do we have any interpretations of salt? Salting the earth? Sure. Salting the earth equals making it barren. That's not exactly how the Bible uses salting the earth. But it does preserve, it does dry things, right? There is an association with like drying and death, sort of. You want to go out to the room, Harper? Okay. So, salting the earth, yes, you get barren. Because like Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, is something he says to followers. But gonna represent purity, destruction, sacrifice again. Make pastures unsuitable. Oh, in a literal sense. Okay. Different from salt of the earth. Sure. Okay, so this is outside of the Bible. To make barren, I dig it. In like an agricultural sense. Thank you for the explanation. Purity as well in salt. This is definitely true. Right? Salt does this. Salt cleans things. Destruction, certainly. We have the sea, right? Tell me, drowning devil, about salt meaning sacrifice. Sadness. Definitely sadness from crying. Tears, right? And, for some reason I also think of emptiness when I think of salt. Interesting. Why do you feel that? Salt in rituals, yes. Ritual, it is used for cleansing, right? That is perhaps one of the connections for purity up above, salt circles, these kinds of things. Another connection, if we're going to other sources of meaning, salt represents the body in alchemy, right? This is another way that salt is used, for example. And so it's in many different places. So yeah, many different things. Okay, yeah, salt in a lot of rituals in terms of sacrifice. Sure, being salty in modern slang? Sure, absolutely. They have the idea of being salty. And this is like really fun to do, especially with other people, because any interpretation goes. We can kind of leave behind the poem and just say anything related to salt. I like treating these like a word association game. Exactly. Yes. Solarium. Oh, I see. Okay. So wealth, perhaps. I'm just gonna put it as that, right? But wealth. Let's do, of course, like the food association is one that's pretty big. And did I miss anything? I was gonna write down sacrifice. Also preservation, which maybe goes along with purity, right? But this is, of course, we use salt to preserve like meat and stuff. And this is why, so these are fun, especially when it's a very broad word, right? Like salt. Like, Crown of Thorns has very specific associations, right? But salt is very broad. HQ, welcome. Isn't pure sodium explosive in water? Yeah, that's just because, like, the sodium metal. Sodium metal is what is that? An alkali metal in the first column of the periodic table, along with lithium, potassium, and further down, more dangerous things. And essentially, it has a charge of -1, +1. And it basically, it takes a hydrogen, so it'd be +1 from water, and then it violently rips apart the water and makes like a chemical explosion, which is very cool. And then potassium does this on a greater level. So if you drop potassium into like a pool of water, it's like even more of a bomb. Very cool. Probably not necessarily like salt, right? Because sodium metal is not salt, really. Salts are actually compounds of an alkali metal and something else, right? Salt is a Na sodium Cl chloride. This girl knows her science. I remember things well. So that's associations with salt. I think we have plenty. And we might start to see connections. How about gardens? And we can start biblical, right? We can say, obviously, there is like Eden, and this sort of is like creation. This relates to the poem, because the poem is biblical. But what else do we think of as we think of gardens? There are many, many associations. Again, probably like salt, and just anything that comes to mind. Like Drowning Devil said, word association. It's super fun. Regardless, I don't know why you're analyzing it, but I associate with not getting dead and also yes, getting dead. Getting tilted being salty old sailor. Yeah. That's salty in quotes here. We're reading a poem by Drowning Devil. It's pinned, it's called Crown of Thorns. It's about being gay and also God. Dirty, kids, fruit, flowers. Beautiful. Dirty. Kids. Fruit. I cannot spell. UIT. Flowers. Okay. What else we got? Scrubbing and cleaning. Sure. Perhaps that goes along with dirt. Dirty / cleaning. Did you just Control Z your paper? This is like an iPad. I love being able to Control Z my paper, yes. Blood pressure? Stylish fail. Gardens? A garden is tamed nature. Interesting. It is tamed, sort of a domestication of sorts. That was still salt. Blood pressure was still salt, perhaps. Oh, salt was cleaning? We are beyond salt. We're done with salt. We need to differentiate, right? I'd mean it's somewhere close. It'd mean it's somewhere close in quality. I'm so lost in chat right now. I'd love for my writing to be mistaken for yours. For Drowning Devils? Did I say Drowning Devil? That's what it was. By Imrepenguinoman. I like that y'all like each other's writing. Y'all are cool. You missed the transition. Garden is tranquil. Sure. We can talk about peace maybe. That's just a broader word. Eden. Creation. Dirt. Kids. Fruit. Flowers. Tamed. Peace. Anything else? Schmancy. Oh, that's fancy. Like gardens are fancy. Yeah. Fancy / wealth. Again, maybe. Work. Yes, that is definitely associated with gardens. Is work. Doing stuff. Digging. Getting down in there. Right? Referring to your iPad. Gardens are schmancy too. See, I get so lost in chat. Gardens are fancy though. We talk about like opulent big gardens and palaces and stuff. The iPad is schmancy. I've had it for a long time. Understandable. Have a nice day. Heliox, welcome. Hanging Gardens. That is definitely something. Probably not related to this poem, but it is definitely an association, right? It is very hard to keep up. Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of chat. There's a lot of things. That seems good for gardens, unless we have anything else. I'm trying to move through these quickly because we have a lot. The next is seed. Associations with seed as a symbol in our poem. Do we have thoughts? Anything related to the idea of seeds? Pregnancy, children, yes, absolutely. He's seed. Yeah, exactly. Pregnancy. And growth, for sure. Seed. We have like the literal like sexual like, hold on, sex. Yeah, we'll just do sex, right? Planting one's seed, one's lineage. Teleology. The tree is contained in its seed / purpose. So like the origin, the purpose. What are we doing today? We're analyzing a poem, as you can see in the pinned chat. It's called Crown of Thorns by Imrepenguinoman. So like origin, and we're currently just doing a symbolic analysis. So we're looking at all the symbols and looking at what they might mean, how they might relate to, you know, the Bible, because this is a biblical related poem, and also society and things at large. So we're just sort of playing word association here. Origin / like purpose. Sure. The purpose of the seed is to become the tree. Yeah. Similar to like the growth. There is in the Bible, there is the parable of the sower, which we might read. It also has the word mustard in it, so that's my draw to get you all in. Mustard. Okay. I can't really just scream mustard in chat. Tasty. Yes, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, all very tasty. Tasty, especially with salt. Seedy? Sketchy. I like it. Yeah. I'm gonna get out an actual factual Bible. Bad crunch? You don't like the crunch, Drowning Devil? Look, it's my Bible. There's a bird on it. This is strictly for research purposes only, usually in relation to poetry. I'm not sure. What am I looking for? The parable of the sower. We're going to straight up read the Bible on Twitch. Anything new for seeds? Not a fan of seeds? Fair enough. I guess you eat like a fruit and then the seeds get stuck in your teeth sometimes. That's not as good, right? I forgot which one is the parable of the sower. I should probably look it up. That'd be easier. Or at least the verse. Parable of sower. Matthew 13. Okay. Because this relates to the poem very directly. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You're in the wrong chapter. What did I say? 13? Parable of the sower. Boom. I will read this to you all because this is what the poem is most directly referencing, is this verse from the big Bible book that we know and do not love, as many of us are queers.
That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered around him. So then he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came down and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell amongst thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil, and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. That is the parable. The parables are my favorite part of the Bible, easily, as a non-Christian. It didn't say mustard. There's a mustard seed somewhere else in the Bible. Just trust me on that. It might just be in a different telling of that one. Oh, that's interesting to reference that one. Truly just linking how you grow to become who you are. Yeah, but it also, so it ends with basically talking about hearing is what he ends with. Hearing. And basically he's referring to his teaching, right? So we have this person, sort of this farmer, wearing some boots, walking along the path, whatever, right? And he's casting out all these seeds onto the ground, right? He's got his hat. This is the sort of image, right? So we have this farmer wearing his hat, sowing seeds, and they go out and land various places, right? Sometimes the seed lands amongst rocks and not good soil, right? And so it rains, the seed sprouts up its little sprout, and then the sun comes down and kills it, because it does not have roots, it is not on good soil. Sometimes it lands on the path itself, in front of the farmer, not good soil, seed just doesn't even sprout. Sometimes it lands amongst thorns. Speaking of thorns, also used in this poem, right? And it comes up and sprouts, and then it gets choked out by these thorns, right? Weeds and whatnot. This is what it is. But the seed represents hearing the teachings in the Bible. So basically, landing on the road, for example, is getting this seed, getting the word of God, right, as they say, and not listening and turning away. Sometimes you grow and you listen and you're like, oh, maybe I like this. Maybe I dig this Jesus guy's teachings, right? And your little seed grows up, and then the sun scorches it because you realize life is hard and it gets challenged by things, and you don't have a good root system, you don't have a strong and deep faith or something, and then you die, basically. Your faith dies. And then you have the thorns. You hear it, and you start to grow, you start to find faith, and then other people, other plants, choke you out and don't let you hear. Which I think is really perfect for this poem, to jump back to the poem itself a little bit, because we talk about this person who's denying God. This person, the subject, is essentially the seed on maybe the barren ground, the seed that does not grow. Perhaps it's the seed that was once growing and then got challenged. I know you're explaining it, but I don't really think the parallel makes sense for what they're trying to say. Or maybe my autistic ass is misunderstanding something. So basically, this is just what the parable means. It gets explained later in the chapter, maybe like the next verses, but this is what he's referring to. So he says that essentially some people hear, some people do not. This is the seeds being sowed. Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? So you can think about the seed coming into your heart, the word of God or whatever, and then you reject it, it dies, or it gets challenged, or it grows and makes wheat and spreads godliness or whatever. Right? But essentially the poem looks at a reinterpretation of this, saying, well, I have found love. The subject has found love in a man, probably, as a man, and that love is now wrong, right? It's more just a reference to that past thing, but this is just referring to, right, the way, sort of something that God sort of says, I guess, in the Bible, right? It's, a few steps removed. It's how poetry tends to be, the difficult part. But that's a strong seed analogy in the Bible. There's also the mustard seeds. It's the mustard seed is the smallest of your seeds, the one I'm thinking of. I am thinking of that one, Heliox flame. Mustard seed comes up a lot in the Bible. Something super small. Okay, yeah. Farmer Onan. I think they use the analogy more often. Yeah. So there's a few seeds. There's also the mustard seeds. But it does say specifically sowing. But this is like the seed that God has given. Let's continue, though. Not get too lost in the details. Flesh. What does flesh represent? In its entirety, culturally. Biblically, everything. Literature. In any culture. Your culture. I don't care. What does this mean? Flawed. Sensitive. Fragile. Sure. Flawed is a good one. Sensitive. Sort of talked about skin in your last poem, Drowning Devil. Or maybe not the last one, maybe the one before. No, my body's a house coat, right? Fragile, tasty, crunch. Yes, in terms of creatures, maybe not human flesh. Tasty. Temporal as opposed to eternal. So yes, temporal, maybe earthly, or like of earth, as opposed to the eternal of heaven. Mortal, same deal. Sinful. Yes, the Bible likes this. Sinful. And we can talk about, sex, right? The body, flesh, we touch each other, we kiss each other, this is what we do. And there is then maybe pleasure as well associated with this as a symbol. Good choices. Anything else? Any other meanings for flesh out there in chat? Meat, yes, that perhaps goes along with tasty. Flesh as meat, for sure. Hopefully, as long as it's not the Jeffrey Dahmer type of flesh as meat. But that seems like pretty good for that one. If there's any others that you think of, and for any of the past ones, just like say that it's relating to a past one, because we're going to keep moving forward. Barren. I'm not sure if this is a symbol so much as something that needs to be explained. Fruit flesh, yeah. barren, I think, I'm not sure if this has so much symbolism, so much as just having like the double meaning of land that does not grow things, and sort of like the in terms of like birth. This is how the Bible often uses barrenness. Yeah, maybe it is a symbol. Hopelessness. Don't really got any symbols for barren. Yeah, it's not so much a symbol as it just has like a few different things. Hopeless. Sure. And then I don't know if we need to do gift, because it is referring to just like God's gift, more of a theme. Yeah. Same with the gift. This is just like generally in the Bible refers to like salvation and stuff, right? So it is the contrast between the barrenness and the gift in this poem. So we have a lot of recurring themes. If we go back to the crown, we have I just erased it. We have like purity against suffering and sacrifice. And then if we look at the salt, we have purity and sacrifice. Ritual, the body as part of salt, which of course go back to flesh, like the sex, the pleasure, along with the seed, the sex, and then like origin and growth, like the garden, creation, Eden, barren in birth. So we can see that many, many things here connect. These are where we place our sort of overlapping things, and we find very, very clear through lines and themes throughout this poem. Maybe the mortality, maybe not. The sin for sure, right? Sin, sex, fruit, peace, that's just the garden, many things. But I'd say if we were to pull them out, it would be purity, sin, pleasure, perhaps connected to that one, right? Birth, growth, sacrifice. Any others? The body is a big theme, right? So these are sort of like the through lines throughout all of the major symbols. And now we can say the poem very likely has something to do with at least one, if not all, of these things. And we've accomplished that just through like basically associating words with other words and seeing where they connect to each other, right? Which is pretty cool. So maybe talk about creation. So you see how maybe through a low amount of effort or just sort of a fun activity in a sense, that makes it sound like I'm like a teacher in a class, activities. But through something that's a fun little exercise, you can get a lot of meaning that is probably related to your poem. And then we can go back to the work now and say, okay, what does this mean as it relates to these things? And I'm gonna like grab these, cut, and I'll put these up here. Paste. These are our things to remember. And we can even now look at these and go through the entire poem and say, what does this poem say about them? Because we've identified the poem talks about purity. That's useful. It makes it maybe relate to other poems. It talks about sin. Like these are themes. That's a way to maybe describe the poem. This poem is the tension between pleasure and purity and sin and God and these kinds of things, right? But that doesn't really tell us what the poem is saying. So we can go through and look at purity and say, what is this poem's outlook on purity? And then what is this poem's outlook on birth and sin and sacrifice and each of these things and growth, and roughly find probably a cohesive meaning to the poem, if we've done this right. And I think we have. But before that, I'm going to take a brief break of 2 minutes to stretch and make sure if you have to take meds, med check, drink water, stretch, all of these things. I will be doing all those kinds of things. And I'll be right back. Thank you, Heliox Flame, for subscribing. That means so much to me. I appreciate it. Now you can see me when I pace around my room and stretch. I think that makes you a founder. Yeah. Okay. Sit back down. Back to poetry. Thank you so much, Heliox Flame. It means a great deal to see that people believe in supporting my art. And welcome back, everyone. I am still Jenny, still known as 2/3 Lotus, still known as the only trans femme who has ever written a poem. And we're reading Crown of Thorns by Imrepenguinoman. So, we did a symbolic analysis and we identified probably a lot of broader themes of this poem. And now we want to go through and look at, well, how do these relate? The poem talks about purity. What does it say about purity? Etc. So, purity is usually associated with anything related to God. So, for example, something as simple as verses is likely related to this theme of purity. And I've carved your verses into my flesh. So this, of course, relates to the counter side of purity. We talked about flesh as something that is sinful, according to the Bible. So, carving your verses into my flesh is saying something about maybe an attempt at purity, right? At the beginning of this poem. Likely before maybe the failure of being gay later on. My God, why have you forsaken us? Are we but drafts you tear and cast aside? Does the writer mourn his torn art? Or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? So the garden, the purity, upholding this thing that he hopes for the subject to return to, or maybe he doesn't. This is the question. Are we cast aside, impure, abandoned, or is there still something there? This is the question, right? And it doesn't so much tell us a ton as much as it, again, poses the question. But it shows that there's a fundamental grappling with the idea of purity, right? We struggle with it. And going back, salt was something we had associated with tears, right? Salt also has that like painful aspect and the other associations, right? But it might not mean purity here, right? Until they dry and leave my eyes barren. That's more of the suffering side of salt. But in a sense, maybe there is still some relation to purity there, with tears, with that barrenness being related to the flesh, opposite of purity. Are you the one who made me impure, right? Hard to say for sure. It asks a lot of questions. Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? So the gift of, from the perspective of like the Bible, from this poem, is going to be salvation, right? And yet the poem says, is this a burden? Is this something that is weighing on me and not so much pure? But burden probably has some sense of not pure. If all was pure, if all was good, we would just be fine and happy. But we wonder if it is a burden. Would no man falter in my position? Do you seek to witness credence in tribulation, or is agony the secret chord you long to hear? So secret chord indicates some amount of like godliness, being of like David in the Psalms. We didn't really read that much, but we mentioned it. And is agony what you long to hear? So it suddenly is juxtaposing the idea of credence, purity, with tribulation, the secret chord with agony, saying perhaps that the purity that God seeks is in some way connected to the agony. And if we go back to the tears, we have this idea of the pure thing, the salt, him salting them, and yet them being so inextricably related to suffering. Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? So I claim mine is tainted. Again, the purity God has created, love, what you feel, and yet a claim of impurity of that, right? Impurity. And we can see the sort of frustration of the poet here, saying all of these different things. Why does it feel so hypocritical that what is pure in some cases is not in others? Why is something that is often good now in this case bad? Why have you forsaken me? Right? Forsaken, to be forsaken is a betrayal. There's some amount of a lie, resentment, right? And deserving of death, when I finally found heaven, purity, again perhaps laying beside me in the end. You have found the subject has found their joy, their purity, their heaven in another person, and yet it is rejected. My God, why have you forsaken me? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns. So here's the burden again, connecting back earlier. And clearly we say, right, this is where we stop asking quite so many questions. No question marks here. Makes sense for a conclusion, right? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns. So, your burden, your gift, the thing that you say is maybe divine, pure, honest salvation, is in actuality pain. Thorns. Conditional. Can't meet. Flesh of flesh. Bone of my bone. He is not lust. One might call a lover lust, discard it as impure. However, the conclusion of this poem is that he is love, and that this action is indeed pure. Right? That's what happens when we look at this through purity. And generally, I think sin and pleasure and those things are going to be roughly related throughout, so that maybe all gets lumped into one. Let's look at this poem in terms of birth and that meaning that we felt throughout the themes. My God, why have you forsaken me? I've carved your verses into my flesh, yet dark is my night and cold is the ground. If we're talking about the birth, growth, the seeds, then a cold ground is one that is unfit, right? We talked about the sower. Perhaps this person is one unfit for the verses. Unfit. Are you the one who salts my tears, till they dry and leave my eyes barren? Eyes are also another symbol, knowledge, understanding, love, soul, whatever, intelligence. Are you the one who salts my tears until they are dry and leave my eyes barren? My eyes are unable to produce, being barren. They are salted. They are dead, right? They are what does that mean, I guess, if we look at the eyes? Well, perhaps they're unable to feel emotion. Emotionless, right? Or that they've cried all of the emotion out of them, that they have suffered to such a great degree that they cannot bear, barren, produce, birth, any more suffering. Almost as to say that I've suffered all that I will. You have given me all that you can, and I'm done. Right? Are we drafts you tear and cast aside, or does the writer mourn his torn art? Or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? There's probably some amount of ideas of birth in the idea of the writer. You know, I sometimes talk about poems in a way that's almost like my children. Are we but drafts you tear and cast aside? So this takes a different look at, or it looks at birth and the way that maybe God in this poem treats birth as a very negative thing. It is not caring. Give birth, cast away. Give birth, cast away. Write a poem, tear it up, like I do. I don't tear up my poems. I just send them out into the world and forget about them. We're working on it. My God, why have you forsaken me? Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? Would no man falter in my position? Do you seek to witness credence in tribulation? Or is agony the secret chord you long to hear? Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? Birth, seed. So I claim mine tainted. This is interesting, right? We talk about he is love and being a man. This is where the idea of this being gay comes from. So to be tainted, it's sort of this action. There's an inability to give birth in this relationship. To give birth. And this is why at the very start, when I realized the gay connection, I'm oh, the ideas of birth and barren are so very powerful because of how they connect within this poem to the idea of being gay, right? When I finally found heaven laying beside me in the end. Why have you forsaken me? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns. Conditional in nature, I can't meet. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone. He is not lust, he is love. So it's maybe a smaller theme, the idea of birth, than that of like sin. But there's some amount of like maybe God not allowing for growth, God not allowing for birth, God creating something that is barren, but then simultaneously describing as tainted something that is sort of barren in a sense, which plays into this double standard, this contrast of what God says, what God does, the suffering that we have in this poem. Sacrifice. Let's talk about the Jesus part. I guess we didn't break down Jesus as a symbol, which is something you probably want to do in a poem like this. But there's a salvation, there's an ultimate feeling to that. It is fundamentally important and grand and large and all these things, right? This is big. This is like salvation. And it is sacrifice. And our author relates themselves to Jesus in this poem by asking, my God, why have you forsaken me? So in the case of the Bible, God basically sends Jesus down to earth, right? It's blue. Earth is blue, right? And says, like, go down there in, all of this, right? Jesus, go down there, right? I guess he was, like, there. And, like, save these people. And you're gonna die. That's what you're gonna do. And you're gonna save everyone. That's the plan here. Right? On egg-shaped earth. And yet it fundamentally involves suffering and a sacrifice. The idea in the Bible is that Jesus takes on all of the sin of everyone there, places it upon himself, and then, like, dies and then cleanses everyone, essentially. A sort of representation of the ending of sin for all people. And yet our author relates to themselves, Jesus, in the poem. Now, why do we do this? How is the author in some way a sacrifice? How is the author in some way lifting sin? Well, one thing we can think about is the end of this poem. Conditional in nature, I can't meet. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone. He is not lust, he is love. By the end of this poem, it comes to reject God, very fundamentally. And there is a sort of aspect of salvation here. By freeing oneself of the verses carved into the flesh, the sort of original sin, suddenly there is salvation. There's a great lyric from the band Streetlight Manifesto in a song called Down, Down, Down to Mephisto's Cafe, my favorite songs ever. And it goes like, down, down, down to Mephisto's Cafe. This is about religion and accepting hell, right? Where's the lyric? Everything's for nothing. Somebody shouted, all is lost. I can't buy that nonsense too. Way back when the prophecies began, they really have much fabled stories. The punishment that they threaten constantly is only real if they could just convince me, right? This is what that feels like. The sort of victory at the end of this poem. In rejecting God, you reject the punishment, the suffering of hell. Suddenly, The tears, the eyes are left barren. The pain is almost gone. You've in some way cleansed yourself of sin through your suffering, which is weird. Through your rejection, through God forsaking you, the subject. Which is poignant, right? Said a bunch of things in chat. I wonder if Jesus ever had a sleepless night. Wonder why God chose him to be the one to teach humanity. I wonder if Jesus ever thought about how it affected his parents as well. Just typing my thoughts. I mean, one would presume. I think one of the most powerful lines, maybe in the Bible, is Jesus wept, right? 2 words, 1 verse. Jesus wept. And it's just like tormented by this within the story, if we're just looking at it as a story, right? Like, that tells me that yes, that was true, right? On the first one, I believe it's talked about when he goes into the desert out for the 40 days. Also when he gets crucified. Add a few asterisks, depending on the Bible, which chapter, etc. Yes, it depends. So many additions. I like thinking about the humanity of the characters in the Bible. Of course, if these truly are stories and they were real, then these people have gone through some heinous shit. Yes. There are a few apocryphal books that go deeper into it. Interesting. I need to read more apocryphal books, but I need to read the whole Bible first to just, like, know it well. For literary purposes, right? The Infancy Gospel of Thomas has a few really funny stories about young Jesus. Hi, Caliber. Hello. Welcome in. We'll read your poem next, which is very soon. So, clearly this poem is an extremely cohesive look at sort of escaping the suffering of faith. And how Maria gets really ticked off. Someone saw my cat? What do you mean, saw your cat? When he fucks around charming snakes and such? That's funny. So I dig this, right? And I feel, in terms of analysis, like, it says all of these things extraordinarily well, and it tends to be that at the end of analysis, I've come to a point where I feel something says all the things that it means to say very perfectly, right? But now I must ask, for the sake of critique, Penguinoman, if you are here, do you have any elaboration or thoughts on this poem, or questions that would lead me to maybe give you advice to improve this going forward? I think you did ask questions in your submission. You said, how do I make it more emotive? That's interesting. I'm going to talk about that first. While you think of anything else. Voices. I've been forcing my voice too much. I should be talking down here. Oh, okay. If you like that idea, read Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal. Oh, I've heard of that book. Does anyone find it interesting how there's a lot more books in the Bible that are just not used? I think that's exactly what Stylish Fail is saying. That's what the apocryphal books are. That's what they are. That's the name for it. Apocryphal. By Christopher Moore, very funny, a lot of references to world religions, Christian apocrypha, etc. Like unofficial books in a sense. Definitely check out the Ethiopian Bible. The oldest and biggest. Truly another story. They're just trying to figure out how to make it more oomph. Yeah, I feel that. Because you talk about these like deep emotional things, right? All this being rejected by God and stuff. In the end, he is not lust, he is love. So like, I understand what you mean here. And I think this is a trouble that comes with making great reference to something, actually. When you reference, like, the Bible a lot in a poem, it sometimes draws away from the power of your, like, emotive stuff. Because you just look at all these, like, references, right? But you love the line, "He is not lost, he is loved." I do like that a lot as well. And, like, "Oh my God, why have you forsaken me?" Part of it is, so I think one of the most emotional lines in your poem is, "He is not lost, he is love." Maybe Chad agrees with me. I don't know. This is probably the most emotional line to me, followed up by maybe the salting of the tears. Perhaps. Or the writer, but that's probably just because of personal relation. Ooh, but also agony. So, like, there's definitely some emotion here. Does anyone else have lines they feel are the most emotional or most impactful to them? Because then maybe we can look at what people feel makes this poem emotional. And then we can maybe say, well, how can we do more of this, right? You're not sure? I'm asking the rest of chat. Drowning Devil, Stylish Veil. Do we have a most emotional line here? Drowning Devil, you said you do like "He is not lost, he is love," and I agree with that one for sure. Were there any lines that really, like, stuck out to us? The last line for you. Yeah, okay. You like the line about his love being tainted? Yes. I like this one's definitely good. So Stylish Veil is also "He is not lost, he is love." And let's try to figure out why this line is emotional here. So we talked about, in the poem, these broad, like, tensions, right, between the two big ideas. The tension of the godly purity and the earthly, like, sin and stuff. This is probably the most overarching theme of the poem. And I think, really, this line distills down that theme into a very, very short space. He is not lost. Whereas God says that he is lost because of everything we've read before. He is love because I have made the choice to abandon God, turn away, and follow my own love. You see how much we have packed into here, and we can even continue to break that down, right? And this is maybe an important reason why this feels emotional, is it encompasses the poem. Now, of course, we can't have every line encompass the poem, because then we don't really have a poem, we just have a slop of self-reference. I think if we distilled that down, the poem would be like, I, right? Entire poem references the poem. He is not lost, he is love. I think this also pulls us back down to actual, concrete, human relation and feeling. Another thing I finally found heaven laying beside me in the bed. Right? This is great. And it is also fairly encompassing of the poem. I didn't find heaven there. I found heaven here, in the flesh, in the bed, in the world of sin and whatnot. Right? So in a sense, all of these things, why do you claim my heart is tainted? My tears, my eyes, the salt, these are things we feel. We relate. we maybe don't relate so much to, is this the burden of your most cherished gift? Because it's abstract, right? A lot of times we talk about evoking feeling with show, don't tell, where you tell us about burdens and you ask questions, which is a useful device in this poem, and I think that should be kept. You ask all these questions, but these are questions in the abstract. These are questions to God. And yet, in this poem, when we look at it, we feel the most, it seems, based on these, when we have human experience in the poem. When we talk about human love and human lust and the experiences we have, the things we see, our feeling of being tainted, our pain, right? Even something like, is this agony the secret chord you long to hear? This uses sort of like 5 senses. This is something we relate to. So, would no man falter in my position? I find to be an extremely heavy line, right? I'm in this position, I have this world, I see this beauty, and I see a God that's telling me I am, like, messed up. Who would not falter? Or would no man falter, right? Like, again, encompassing of the poem. So, I think it's really when the subject speaks to us and doesn't speak to God. Of course, we need to look at the relationship with God in the subject of this, the subject's relation to God in the poem, because, like, that is probably, I mean, that's what the poem's about, right? So it's something of balance. I mean, you generally have something pretty emotional in every stanza. Now, maybe not this one, because it's just talking about, like, God and writer and garden. I would call this maybe your weakest stanza. I mean, even if we look at what I've annotated, it's fairly empty here of connection, of emotion. And it's not bad, like, it's useful. But this stanza actually might be one of, like, critique, just because it doesn't do these things that the other ones do, right? So that's maybe a hypothesis. Let me go back in chat. There's a lot in chat. I've tried weaving in bigger ideas in the poem, like the thoughts of God still maintaining this garden for us when we returned. And like the entire idea, there's no prizes for circumstance, only character, relating to how God truly judges your character on how you resist temptation and the subject's hesitance with this idea before outright rejection at the end, but it all feels bland. And I think it's because of that, like, because you have these really high level ideas, and going further into abstraction, I think pulls you further from direct, heart-wrenching emotion. Now, abstraction is great for the analyst. Abstraction is great for vague feelings, but you're also trying to describe something very specific, the turning away of God. And I'd like to see how the subject, maybe more time of the subject really reacting to this, right? So it could mean a longer poem. It could mean sort of distilling some of the abstraction down and pulling it back into something more emotional. I also wonder, like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Is a fundamentally powerful line. And this would maybe be the most powerful line in the poem, relating yourself to Jesus, if it didn't show up 5 times, right? And the repetition is nice, especially like when this is spoken. This felt excellent to read. You do some great rhyming. Or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? Like, I think actually this stanza is maybe the funnest to read, even though it's the least substance, in my opinion. Which is interesting, right? But my God, like, this takes up so much space of your poem. Literally, your poem is 1/3. My God, why have you forsaken me? because it's 2 out of 6 lines in every stanza. And it makes it important, but we talk about repetition and repetition being useful. I wonder if this is an instance of repetition getting to its diminishing and even negative returns because it is so dominant over the poem, and it could be less. And you do vary it. You do say forsaken us, but I don't find that to add so much to the phrase of my God, why have you forsaken me? It just adds this second person, right? So you like the line, blah, 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 blah. To me, the line is very impactful because the entire poem, he is questioning himself and why God is doing this. And he just kind of says, fuck it. Exactly. It's like the decisive moment. It's the action. I like the device of asking questions of God, and Penguin puts them very well. They are great questions, yes. No wasted words, very cutting, and they have a very concise and strong thesis without having to spell it out. Agreed. The last point, very admirable. That's usually where poems I like less lose me. For some reason, I imagine the last line is the speaker telling the person that taught them all of this what he thinks. Like a pastor or something. He's not lust, he's love, right? It's interesting. Also, Penguin doesn't fall into the trap of just using cliché. They've really tried to riff off of it. Absolutely. Digging into some of these things, right? Having to dig for the parable of the sower, which I think is a great connection. The barrenness, these ideas are very useful in the poem. You do the reference well. Absolutely. Maybe the one heavy-handed thing to me is my God, why have you forsaken me? Really appreciate the kind words. Well, it's a good poem. You like the repetition because it is such an often used phrase in my experience, for sure. You also like the repetition. I think it doesn't have a lot of punch when used as one line, but it does work as a through line. I get that. They could cut more. They could cut through more. Yeah, so you could repeat it. You could have 3 instead of 5. This is maybe my advice, but clearly this is the great thing. This is what I want this channel to be right here. Different analysis, different feedback. Like, art is subjective. Yes, this is what I want. This is, yeah. I'm finally figuring out how to get chat to participate. This feels really good. Okay. So maybe I'm outvoted. Or maybe you agree with me. It doesn't really matter. Oh, by the way, I think I should mention now that the seed you sow is also a sort of ironic, humorous, almost comical thing. Like, talking about the idea of not really listening to what the preacher preaches. Love is not the seed you sow in our hearts. Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? Yeah, I mean, I see, like, there's certainly a degree of irony there, right? Talking about the idea of not really listening to what the preacher preaches and hesitating with it. And it never touches on how, like... Are you saying you're going for something that I didn't pick up on here, like humor? Because I don't feel humor in that line, basically at all. How much people interpret the Bible differently? Yeah, I mean, it's the question of, like, don't you believe in love, but you invalidate my love? Is how I see what you're saying here. I don't necessarily see that as sort of a... There's an irony, certainly. There's a maybe comedy to that fact, but I'm not sure. Nerdering. Welcome, and thank you for the raid. Razor Monkey, thank you for following. We are just sort of at the end of analyzing a poem by Imrepenguinoman, long time chatter here, and just having a good time doing some poetic analysis. Chat's involved. We're just giving some advice to this poem. Might be a sort of awkward place to come in, but that's what we're doing. And my name is Ginny. 2/3 Lotus, if you don't know me. And we do poetry a lot here. That's kind of all we do. We're the poets of Twitch. People are able to submit. If you are a poet or a writer of creative stuff that isn't long form prose, then you can use !submit to send me your work, and I will read it, which is pretty cool, I think. And Nerdarine, welcome and thank you. How are you doing today, Nerdarine? How was your stream? What were you doing? I hope all was well. Long time no see from Stylish Fail. You're in Nerdarine's D&D campaign now, I believe. And what else was to say? If you need to raid and run, raider or raid chat, do so, please. Take care of yourselves, and that is something you should do. Long time no see to you, Ginny. I don't recognize the name Razor Monkey. I am the Dark Knight. I am Batman. Oh my gosh. Welcome, Batman and the Dark Knight, Razor Monkey. So, let's continue with this poem. I must do such things. This is what we do. We read poetry. And I guess I'll ask Penguinoman if you had any other questions. Ops on Eagle? Oh, are you Poyo? Stream was lovely. Wrote a pretty hefty chapter outline that's been building up for like 37 chapters. Took it out of me. This is insane to me, right? I always say as a poet that prose is so difficult to me. The scale of it, the connection, whatever, it's very, very difficult to me. So I admire your prose writing abilities. Poyo in that case, or Razor Monkey, I painted my nails as you recommended, according to the picture. You love both. Yeah, I mean, I like prose. I like reading prose. I don't like analyzing prose, at least not on stream, because I'm not comfortable with it, but, you know, that's fine. So, I guess, Penguinoman, I shall ask. Do you have any questions? Think you're pretty good on the question front. Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to read your poem two more times. One more time, just one more time. And then we'll be done with this poem and we'll move on to something else. So y'all are catching me right at the end of a section of stream. I feel the same way about poetry. The nuance, the literary devices, how much thought goes into every word. It feels very overwhelming. That's why our analyses come out to look something like a painting, right? Because there is so much to dig into, and that's what we love to do on stream. We've been doing this since the start of stream. Maybe like 30 minutes in, so this has been an hour and 50 minutes with this poem. So that's the sort of depth that we go into here. You love them both as well, only able to do one though. Yes, I feel that way. I love them. I can only write poetry right now. I have some prose I want to write, but we'll see, right? If it makes you feel better, Nuri, I don't think too hard on my poems. I just write them. That's kind of how I am, but I also think hard on them. It depends on the day. It depends on the poem. It depends on what we're writing about. Definitely relate to that as a poet myself. This is definitely one of the shorter poems I write, and it was so difficult to make every line hit and have impact. Yeah, that is crazy, Penguinoman. This must be the shortest poem you've sent me. I didn't even realize that. I'm a literature major. I'll overthink your world regardless. Yeah, that makes sense. I love thinking about writing and analysis. This is basically my joy in life, is to look at people's words and listen to them and try to understand what they're saying and really listen. So that's what we do. I'm going to read this poem one more time and be done with it, now that you all just joined in. Crown of Thorns by Imrepenguinoman. My God, why have you forsaken me? I've carved your verses into my flesh, yet dark is my night and cold is the ground. Are you the one who salts my tears until they dry and leave my eyes barren? My God, why have you forsaken us? Are we but draughts you tear and cast aside? Does the writer mourn his torn art, or do you still till your garden, hoping for us to return? My God, why have you forsaken me? Is this the burden of your most cherished gift? Would no man falter in my position? Do you seek to witness credence in tribulation? Or is this agony the secret chord you long to hear? My God, why have you forsaken us? Is love not the seed you sow in our hearts? So why claim mine tainted and deserving of death, when I finally found heaven lying beside me in the end? My God, why have you forsaken me? Your burden is flawed and comes with thorns, conditional in nature I can't meet. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone. He is not lust, he is love. Crown of Thorns by Imrepenguinoman. A lovely, lovely, lovely work. Thank you so much for submitting, Penguinoman. It means so much to me that you all send me your work and listen and want to hear my feedback on it. Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.